All right, everybody, welcome back. I'm so excited to be able to bring this guest onto the program. One of the things I thought would be really neat would be for our community to learn from one another. And after we created the retirement budget calculator, I had created a private Facebook group called RBC Nerds, but I never promoted it. I never told anybody about it. It just kind of sat there knowing that one day we were going to have a community. And that's how the community actually started, was on Facebook. Now, of course, we've moved it off of Facebook and built it right into the calculator. But the reason I bring that up is because the very first person, I don't even know how he found the private Facebook group, but this was the very first person that requested to be a member of the private Facebook group. And I remember when I saw the request come through, I was like, oh no, somebody found it. We're not ready to launch this yet. But it's my good fortune to have Mel on the program with us today. He's a recent retiree. He's going to share a little bit of his story about this journey to retirement and through retirement. Mel, welcome to Sound Retirement Radio.
Thank you so much, Jason. It's great to be here and sharing my retirement experiences with the RBC community.
Oh, man, I'm so grateful for it. And I'm sure our listeners are going to get a lot out of this as well. But tell me, I'm just curious, how did you find that Facebook group all those years ago? You were the very first one to find it.
Well, I was searching when I wanted to start my retirement planning process and was very interested in what tools might be out there and to assist me with my understanding the retirement planning process. And I listened to your podcasts often during that time and learned about the retirement budget calculator. And so I just decided to, hey, look, let me explore this a little bit more.
Okay. So, and you just found us.
Yeah. Right.
Well, Mel, so you before the conversation, before I hit record, we were just talking about how you recently retired in 2020, right before COVID hit. Maybe take us back to that moment. Like, what were some of the things you were thinking about? And then you also mentioned you experienced a lot of volatility right after you made the decision. The whole world retired at the same time you did, almost.
Yeah, that's so true, Jason. I retired in February of 2020. Very excited to retire at that time. Really, really ready to launch my retirement and do some of the things that we as retirees want to do in retirement. Hey, look, I was planning to travel a lot throughout. So all of that came to a halt probably about a month after I retired.
Wow.
And then come March or so, the volatility hit my portfolio. And I'm thinking, wow, this is the exact time that they say you're not supposed to retire.
That is painful.
Look,
that's painful.
That was painful. But fortunately for me and all of us, of course, the market roared back within a few months anyway.
Yeah.
And it's fact come back even better than I would have imagined, given the dip that it took back in March. I think it was March of 2020. All in all, it all worked out.
Yeah. And here you are. You've come through the other side. And well, so tell me, what led you to decide to retire? And then I'm curious if there were any impediments with that decision to retire.
Well, I think back to my mother. My mother passed away at age 61 back in the late 90s. And so she retired without being able to enjoy life without work, not being able to enjoy her grandchildren who came along after her death, or even draw a Social Security check. I came to the realization that my go-go years may be numbered as well. All of our go-go years are numbered. I had a desire to enjoy life with my family, my friends, and others while I was physically and mentally capable of doing so. And that was my primary reason for really wanting to delve into the retirement planning process and understand how I might be able to retire relatively early and begin to enjoy those aspects of life.
Yeah.
And there were no impediments that I ran into in coming to that decision because my wife was really on board with everything that I was trying to do. That worked out fairly well.
Awesome. Now, just out of curiosity, is your wife retired or is she still working?
She is still working. She has no desire to retire at the moment. I believe she may continue to work until 70.
Wow.
She has a very good position, a very good job, and she's very well appreciated in her position, and she just wants to continue to work for a while longer. So.
Yeah. I love that. I meet with couples all the time, Mel, where I hear these kind of stories where one person, they're experiencing a lot of stress. They have a vision for what the future looks like. They just don't want to, they want to be retired. And then the other person really enjoys what they're doing. And so they want to continue to work. And then the balancing act, of course, is going to be how do you, because I'm sure there's a lot of places you want to go and things to do and people to see and just all this fun stuff. And so being able to coordinate your guys' calendars around that will be interesting we'll have to have you back in a couple of years, see how you guys managed all of those nuances. But so going about determining your financial readiness to retire, what were the steps that you took? Maybe you can describe the process you went through.
Sure. Well, strangely enough, as I look back on it, Jason, the process for me started about 25 years ago.
Wow.
Now, that might sound strange, but it started not necessarily with the goal of retirement in mind at that time, of course, but with the goal of improving my financial health, preparing to spend for college and preparing to fund home improvements and that sort of thing. I'm a big Quicken user. So back in the 90s, mid 90s, I started using Quicken and started collecting all of my transactions in Quicken. And even at that time, even Quicken had, believe it or not, even Quicken had a financial planning. But I wasn't focusing on retirement at that time. But all this came in handy as I began to develop a better understanding of the retirement planning process. Now, fast forward circa 2015 or so, and at around age 60, I began educating myself, particularly through retirement planning podcasts. And the retirement planning field, I think, was coming into its own at about that time, as I understand it. Everything was all about financial planning, and this retirement planning discipline was sort of in its infancy in the early 2010s and beyond, as I understand it.
Yeah.
So I just hooked on to that, man. And I began educating myself through podcasts, through research. And so as I look back on it, I came to realize that one of the most important aspects of retirement planning is understanding your expenses. And as I look back on what I was doing with Quicken 25 years ago and entering all of my expenses in Quicken, it gave me a sense of, hey, look, I know what my expenses are. Now, granted, 25 years ago, things cost a lot less than they do today, but at least I had the categories of expenses that I need to think about when I'm creating a financial plan.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love those tools like mint.com is a good one. I think they're owned by Quicken now, but Quicken is a great tool. YNAB is another great one. For people that are really trying to track where their money's going, I think those are really great tools. We'll talk in a minute about some of the calculator that I built and how it's really more about forecasting than it is about tracking. But yeah, somebody that already has all of that information, you're already so many steps ahead, just the fact that you have done all that tracking. I'm curious to know, Mel, for the people that maybe are 25 years out from retirement, if you had a piece of advice for them about that journey, what did you do well that you would encourage them to consider?
Well, be disciplined about tracking your finances. It will serve you well in the future.
Okay,
right?
Good. Yeah.
Whatever tool you use.
Yeah.
Right? It will definitely serve you well in the future and as it does while you're using it. So
yeah,
that's one of the things that I would say.
Now, your spouse, your wife, how involved was she in your decision to retire? And did you have to convince her or, tell me what that looked like?
Sure. Well, my wife is very closely involved in whatever I do or we do from a financial perspective. So she is always right there when there are any decisions that need to be made about major purchases or things of that nature. When it comes to investments, I run ideas by her and for her input and approval before I do anything. Since we've been married now, this is our 40th
wow.
Year of marriage, and we've always been on the same page
wow.
with finances